Hello and welcome to The Pod. I'm Nathan Fink.
I'm Jolyn Drennan, and this is New Hampshire Family Now,
a show about building family in the Granite State. Today in The Pod, Father, Nixon-Peabody Associate, and Children's Trust Board member Mark Knights puts his money where his legs are. I clean that up in post. And parent leader Christina Darling joins us to talk voice. New Hampshire Family Now is brought to you by the New Hampshire Charitable Foundation. Since 1962, the Charitable Foundation has worked hand in hand with generous and visionary citizens to maximize the power of giving and support, collaborate, and lead innovative initiatives. Initiatives like New Hampshire Tomorrow, which is focused on making sure children and families have access to education, healthcare, and career pathways to ensure every family member thrives. To learn more about New Hampshire Charitable Foundation and all their initiatives, go to www.nhcf.org. This podcast was also brought to you by Family Support New Hampshire. Family Support New Hampshire is NH's coalition of family resource centers and family strengthening programs that exist to ensure Granite State families have access to resources so both caregivers and children can succeed, because supported families are strong families. To find a family resource center near you, visit www.fsnh.org. We have a quick segment with Mark Knights, current New Hampshire Children's Trust board member and partner with Nixon-Peabody Law Firm. Mark, thanks for coming on the show.
Well, thanks for having me.
So not long ago, you approached us at the Trust and you said you were interested in riding your bike across the state to raise awareness for child abuse and neglect prevention. Question 1A, do you know how far that is? And 1B is, does your body know how far that is?
You know, I know now how far it is, and my body is slowly learning. I've had to ride further than I've ever ridden before on my bicycle. It's about 100 miles across the state in total, and every ride I take these days is the longest bike ride I've ever done. And my body is slowly learning how long that really is.
For many years, I was a bike mechanic, and I understand riding a century is a commitment where your mind might disappear. Your body's going to fall apart, but your mind has to go somewhere for 100+ miles. And I'm curious, what would compel you to do such a thing? Why this, and why for this cause?
Well, over the past couple of years, as you know, Nathan, the New Hampshire Children's Trust hasn't been able to do the traditional fundraisers that it has done in years past, which are mostly in-person type events. And it struck me that as I was out on my bike earlier this year, that a athletic fundraiser of this type is the kind of thing where you don't need to get together with people. It's the kind of thing where I can be out there on my bike alone, ride across the state, and really draw in members of my network who maybe don't understand how passionate I am about the New Hampshire Children's Trust, and make them understand, like, this is so important to me. I'm willing to ride from the Connecticut River Valley to the seacoast to make a statement about the importance of this organization. And
what is it specifically that draws you toward the Children's Trust and its mission to prevent child abuse and neglect?
I'm a parent of 3 children, and my children are fortunate in that we as a family have a lot of supports in place, family members and friends who are able to help us on this parenting journey. And a lot of people don't have that. A lot of children and families don't have that. And the New Hampshire Children's Trust and the family resource centers that it supports help provide that type of a network, and help parents who maybe don't have the same advantages that we have, and the families that don't have the same advantages that we have in my family, learn the strategies and develop strategies they need to succeed as parents, and to give those children in those families a path to success, I'll say.
Yeah. And I noticed on your route, it looks like you're going from Claremont over to Concord, over to the seacoast in Dover. And it looks like that's the basic route, if I'm not mistaken.
That's correct. Yep.
And so you're going to be riding past TLC, which is the Family Resource Center there in Claremont. You'll be riding past Waypoint here in Concord, and you'll be riding past Community Action Partners of Stratford County over in Dover. And much like what we have to go through mentally every day as being parents ourselves and negotiating obstacles and challenges, a lot of it is less physical and more mental. where are you kind of resting your strategies around that physical come mental game that is 100+ miles on a bicycle?
Resilience is not something you just have automatically. It's something that you develop over time. Both physical and mental resilience. And to prepare for this, I've just had to be out on my bike more frequently and for longer distances. And my body and my mind both grow stronger every time I do it. It comes with practice, and I can go further every time I get out there. Distances and routes that seemed difficult in the past and longer in the past don't take as long, and they don't seem quite as hard as they did before. And that's just repetition, and that's practice. And the same thing's true of parenting. Things that are difficult to do, maybe the first time, the first 10 times, over time, the more you practice them, the easier they become. And I think preparing to do this long distance on a bicycle has made me appreciate that so much more, that you over time really develop the skills you need to be able to tackle a problem of this magnitude.
It is. Yeah, it's a challenge. And I agree. I think when we had our first child, I realized I had a deeper gear. Then we had a second child, and it found another gear. You just, if you keep looking for them, you'll find them and find them and find them. As a family man, I'm curious to know, what does resilience mean practically for your family? Why do you wish it upon your family and your children?
To me, resilience means being able to, when you encounter obstacles or challenges in your life, to be able to pull together either individually or as a family unit and overcome those obstacles and those challenges. And certainly these past couple of years are a great example of that, trying to keep everybody on track in school as maybe people were in and out of school for extended periods of time. And make sure that, with a couple of parents working from home for a large portion of the past couple of years, a couple of kids attending school remotely for the past couple of years, that's been a challenge we've needed to draw together and sort of work together as a family and meet that challenge and overcome it. And familial resilience, I think, is what's enabled us to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm thrilled that you're taking this challenge on. This is a ride that, we'll see where it goes. We know the route, and we're going to be looking for you every step of the way. So thank you so much, Mark, for committing to this, and thank you for using it to raise awareness around the family strengthening protective factors that really bring families together and make them develop resilience.
I'm happy to do it, and I can't think of a more worthy organization and cause to do it for.
To learn more about Mark's Ride for Resilience, go to www.nhchildrenstrust.org and look for the little black bicycle at the top of the screen. Today's show was also brought to you by the Children's Hospital at Dartmouth-Hitchcock and the Child Advocacy and Protection Program, a multidisciplinary program with the Children's Hospital established to evaluate and provide integrative care to suspected victims of child maltreatment. Together, a team of physicians, advanced practice registered nurses, social workers, nurses, and child life specialists work to provide consultation and evaluations of children who are suspected victims of abuse, so to serve in the best interest of children and families at multiple levels of prevention. For more information about Children's Hospital at Dartmouth-Hitchcock and the Child Advocacy Protection Program, visit www.chadkids.org/child-advocacy. This podcast was also brought to you by the Parent Information Center and New Hampshire Family Voices, which are statewide organizations that have been working with families, children, and the professionals that support them for over 40 years. They provide information and training to help families, providers, and systems builders make informed decisions so that New Hampshire families can get the support they need to see their children thrive. To learn more, go to picnh.org or nhvf.org. Today in the show, I'm thrilled to welcome Christina Darling, advocate, parent, and all-around superhero who, for these past few months, I've been lucky enough to get to know. Christina, welcome to the show.
Hi, Nathan. Thank you so much for having me.
How's the family? Is everyone in school? Everyone doing okay?
Yes, finally. It's starting to feel like pre-pandemic times now. Caden's back in school. He just started 5th grade. And he has a whole pack of masks that he keeps in his bag so he can change out his mask based on how he's feeling and what he's wearing. And he loves the fashion aspect of it. Brennan has been doing awesome at Marguerite's Place.
That's great. Last time I saw you, you had volunteered to be featured in the Your Voice campaign, which celebrates family voice and its tremendous impact. And I suppose this is a silly question, but why in the world would you volunteer to subject yourself and your family for something like that, a statewide campaign to celebrate voice?
It's because I know what it's like to not have a voice. And I know what it's like, especially with this pandemic. That's been something I really had hit home. And it was that I felt like my voice didn't matter in a lot of different ways. And I had no way of controlling the things that were happening around me. And I was watching other families struggle the same way that I was. It was almost like we were all sitting there calling out through, Facebook, hey, I'm here, I'm drowning, help me. But that's not a way to get help. So being able to be vulnerable for a series like this that allows me to hopefully inspire other people to stand up and be vulnerable and say, hey, I need help, and use the right forms, the right resources to get what they need.
And what was your experience like? We had followed you around, Robin from the Parent Information Center and I, and Burgoo Films. We followed you around for quite some time. What was it like to go through that experience?
So many emotions. I think I started more feeling nervous than anything else, and having to constantly just remind myself, I'm in good hands. I know that, we had talked enough to know that you weren't going to take every blooper I had and throw that out into the wind. So that helped, having that trust already there. And then after, everyone was so wonderful that I forgot that the camera was rolling, which is nice because I feel like that made it so that instead of giving you some sort of scripted performance, the audience gets to see me and how I react and what I say to people and to my kids when I don't realize people are watching.
Yeah. And do you think your experience is emblematic of the experience that is parenting and using what you got to get through?
It's only emblematic of one aspect of it because every family has their own struggles. But, I make the median income for my state. I have the median number of children for my state. We have all of the average bills for the families in our state. And the fact that I am nothing special, I'm not doing anything that, most other families out there are doing. That's what makes this special. It's the fact that I'm able to speak and help lift up the voices of other families who are maybe working 2-3 jobs and trying to make ends meet and don't have time.
And what I'm hearing in that too is like, okay, so there's this realization that you are of the many and emblematic of the many. This is a struggle that's very common. And it sounds like all of a sudden it occurred to you that there's power in that, that, wait a minute, I'm not alone in this.
Absolutely. And there was something, really empowering about realizing that I wasn't alone. It's something we don't talk about it, especially moms. Every mom I know is just trying their hardest to do everything they think they're supposed to do. And they're always being told they're doing too little, not enough, or too much, and they're too involved. There's no happy medium, and living with all that criticism, it gets very isolating. So realizing that I was nothing special, realizing that I was living the same experience as so many others, that helped me to not only not feel alone, but realize, wait a minute, why? Why are so many families who are making this median income, who work full time and are just trying to survive day to day, why are they struggling?
Can you tell me a little bit about your experience as a parent specifically and finding your voice and how that actually rose to the surface for you?
My son, Caden, had a lot of issues when he first went into schooling, and he needed somebody to advocate to help him get the services he needed. And he was at that awkward stage of special needs right in between. And I had to build up my advocacy game for him. And even that wasn't where I'm at now. I didn't start getting to a point where I wanted to advocate on a larger scale outside of just me and my sons until I found myself to be a single mom. And, fresh out of a relationship that had, unfortunately, domestic violence, it took a long time for me and my boys to heal and to work together and make sure that we were in a good place again. And it's still, I've come to learn that it's a work in progress. It's every single day you put the work in. There is no magic. You wake up one day and suddenly, oh, this horrible thing never happened. And we managed to get into a wonderful housing program, got down to Nashua, made the most amazing connections down here. And the people that I met were so connected, for lack of a better term. They genuinely listened when I spoke. They did not offer unsolicited advice. They knew when I just needed to word vomit, and they knew when I needed to see actual progress happen. They're the ones who got me connected with people higher up until the next thing I knew, I was offered the opportunity to testify at the Senate and discuss the New Hampshire Child Care Scholarship. And I realized that not enough people do that. We have the problem that we were having with the Child Care Scholarship is one that every single parent who gets it has experienced for years. I know I'm not the only person to have complained about it in the past. And yet half of these senators had never heard the argument before. They didn't realize what we were struggling with. So being given the opportunity to go and explain my story from my standpoint and say, look, we just want to be treated like everyone else. We want the same, opportunities as everybody else. It was just really beneficial, I think, for my mindset and realizing that advocacy did not have to be on a small scale.
Now, the more I listen to you, the more I think about resilience and being a resilient person, building resilience in your family. And when people talk about resilience, they talk about it as if it were a muscle. The more you use it, the more resilient, the bigger it becomes. And it sounds like voice and using your voice, your family voice, is the same thing. Was that your experience? And how does that feel now, if that is your experience, when you have to use it?
You are spot on. I remember the first time I was asked to speak, I was so nervous. I was shaking. And the first time I spoke at a Board of Education meeting, I was shaking like a leaf. The more I do it, the more I get up and the more I talk to people and the more I realize that I have something worth saying, the easier it gets, the more comfortable I feel. And the more comfortable I feel, the more I'm able to connect with the person I'm talking to and help them to understand different positions from my perspective versus their own.
Now, I'd love to have people hear you in this campaign that we're running. So let me play a quick outtake from the campaign so people can hear what it's like.
It wasn't until I found myself in a position of being a single mom where suddenly I was the only voice for my family. I am just like most single parent families that I've met. It sounds like it's all about courage, and I wish I could say that I'm just super courageous and that it's that easy. But the reality is, it's about being vulnerable.
That was a short outtake from the Your Voice campaign that's currently running through early December. And I wanted to follow up because I think it's so incredibly strong. Practically speaking, you say there it's about being vulnerable. How does being vulnerable help you navigate the system, use your voice? What do you mean by that?
What I ultimately mean is that by being vulnerable, I am laying myself out there. I'm literally cutting myself open, taking the perfect mask that we all wear day in and day out off. And I'm saying, look, I need help. And I don't know anyone who doesn't feel that way sometimes, but we're all afraid to say it. Every single time I have gone to somebody and I have said, this is what I'm experiencing right now. I am so stressed out. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm drowning. Please help me. People have every single time stood up and said, let me help you. And they've extended that hand. And I've made it a point to never ask for help that I don't actually feel like I need. And sometimes that help is in the form of, I just need somebody to talk to me that speaks full sentences and is over the age of 10. Sometimes it's more than that. I need somebody to walk me through how to, purchase a vehicle. Without asking, nobody knows you need help. It sounds so simple. And it really is that simple. It's nobody knows you need help if you don't ask.
Now, how do you distinguish, though, need help from want help? What is your alarm bell that this is a need versus this is a want?
My first question is, is this situation negatively affecting my kids? It is not my children's fault that I do not have $100,000 a year salary. It is not my kids' fault that I, get stressed out trying to make sure that all the bills are paid correctly. So I do everything I can to make sure that everything they could possibly need, and even some of the things they want, are taken care of as my needs.
And everything you said there, I'm like, okay, in that outtake from the campaign, you said that I wish it were about being courage and that it's that easy. Though everything you said to me just now seems so courageous, no?
Courage comes from that moment of being vulnerable. And it comes from being willing to put yourself out there and take that risk and being okay with any outcome. I think that it can be courageous to do it. However, most of the time when I think of courage, I think of, our firefighters who run into burning buildings. I cannot possibly put my speaking out in a public forum on the same level as running into a burning building. That to me is true courage. I feel like what I do is just being honest.
Yeah, I wonder if you ask your kids, I guarantee they see you as the firefighter. Everything we're saying about voice today, to my mind, says this is a powerful tool, not only for yourself, but your family. How are you working to seed that tool in your kids?
Well, they are involved in every little thing I do. That's kind of what happens when you're a solo mom. You have to bring the kids with you. They see me at the grocery store and they see me at events down, throughout the community. They see how I interact with other people, and I make it very clear if a value is really strong for me. And it's always little things, like I have 2 little sisters who are waitresses. So I have very much pushed into both of my kids, you do not go out to eat if you cannot tip well. My son has proven to me that value he has learned and he holds it in him. And that's huge to me. I try to foster every single moment of compassion that my kids bring up. If one of them comes home and says, I want to bring donuts in for my friends the next day, if I can afford that $10 box of donuts, I absolutely do it, because that's them showing they want to give back to their classroom, and that's their community. We were at the Sky Meadow Country Club for a campaign event the other night. And I'm always worried about how my kids are going to be at these events, because they're kids. They're 4 and 10 years old. They have good days and bad. And we get there and I had forgotten it was a cash bar. So I had a roll of quarters in my purse to do laundry with. I cracked it open and I gave a handful of quarters to my son. And I was like, all right, Caden, this is your allowance. Spend it wisely, get yourself drinks as you need it. And it is my understanding that I found out later from one of the waitresses that one of the first things he did was he went to her and he gave her most of his allowance that I had just given him and said, I see that you're working really hard and I wanted to make sure that you got a tip, and this is all I have.
I have so many questions as a father myself about this. And last episode on the podcast, Jolynn gave me permission to ask parents I admire for advice. So when we were filming, you were obviously there with your wonderful boys, and Robin from the Parent Information Center of New Hampshire, our amazing partner on this project, along with New Hampshire Family Voices. I was there, obviously. And I remember a certain point, your older son, Caden, became upset. And I think it was because your younger son wanted to play with something he was playing with, which happens to me a lot. And you went over to Caden and you calmed him down so quickly. How the heck did you do that?
I told him I get it. And then it makes me angry too. And I related to it with him. Whenever my kids are feeling those really big emotions, the very first thing I do is I always try to put myself in their shoes and remember that his brain does not run the way an adult's brain does. And something like having a 4-year-old wanting your toy can be very upsetting. For him, it was, okay, I get it. You're mad. This is not going the way you want it to. I feel that way too sometimes. How can we make this better? What do you need? By asking, what do you need? It's making him stop what he's doing and think more about the future and a positive outcome rather than sitting in his anger. And it's just a fun little trick that I've picked up with that works really well with both of my kids. And the more I've taught them about how to handle their emotions and like how to identify their emotions, the better they've gotten at being able to step back and say, I need space, I need a minute, and go and unpack things however they can.
I mean, there's so much strength in that. I'm going to work on it. It's a struggle for me because I don't know sometimes what to do with that anger and how to face those big feelings forward in a way that's positive. So that really helps me. So thank you for that. What's next for you, Christina? What's happening and where are you going from here with all of this?
So now the plan is to raise my voice up to a platform where I can hopefully do the most good for the most amount of people for the next several years. And I decided to run for an open seat on our local Board of Education here in Nashua. You know, one of the things that I mentioned earlier about not having a voice when big things were happening, I completely support our Board of Education's decision to do the stay at home, to shut down and go remote when they did. What I am upset about is the fact that there was not a single person in that room that was able to stand up and remind everybody that school is more than school for some families, that it is where their children get food. It is where, you know, parents have their kids so that they can work during the day. And when you look at having to pay for that emergency childcare cost for your kid to do remote learning instead of him going to school, it gets so expensive so quick. And I would have advocated for more wraparound services for families who have trouble making ends meet. When I realized that there was that opening and that need on the board, I threw my hat in, and it has been a whirlwind ever since. A lot of campaign events, a lot of door knocking. I have met some of the most fascinating people so far throughout Nashua, and every person I talk to, whether they agree with me and my opinions or not, has just enforced my love for the city and for the kids that live here. And I want to improve the quality of life for as many people as I can.
And if people want to support you, where can they go to learn about your platforms?
Well, I highly recommend checking me out on Facebook. The address is facebook.com/Darling, DARLING 4 BOE.
Thank you so much for being a part of the Voice Project. Your voice is strong, it's courageous, and it's vulnerable. And I absolutely love talking to you. And thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
To learn more about the Your Voice campaign, go to www.nhchildrenstrust.org/your-voice. And to learn more about Family Voice and its incredible impact, go to www.picnh.org/your-voice. One word, that's picnh.org/your-voice. Many thanks to New Hampshire's Office of Social and Emotional Wellness for sponsoring this podcast. Started within New Hampshire's Department of Education, the Office of Social and Emotional Wellness consolidates policy development and implements projects and programs that are focused on health and wellness with an emphasis on behavioral health of all students, youth, and families. To learn more about the Department of Education and its many programs and approaches, visit www.education.nh.gov. New Hampshire Family Now is listed on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, and more. Listen wherever you get your podcasts or ask your smart speaker to play New Hampshire Family Now.